All right. Good evening, everyone, or good morning, or good afternoon, depending on when you're listening to this. My name is Charles, or Chaz, or Yazik, or the DM, or the Bard, however you may know me. And this is the 80th of hopefully many episodes of Bardadvice, a D&D slash TTRPG slash nerd, anime, sports, all things Bard podcast, where I do my best to answer any questions that you might have. You might notice we've got this arm here in the frame, which is not typical. I think that it needs repair, so I'm going to have to work on that. So for this episode, just have to bear with me on on the arm just kind of being in here. Also, apologies for missing last week. I'm still getting adjusted to my new schedule with my online courses that I'm taking, what with all of the channel management things and my part-time slash almost full-time job at the vape shop. It is a bit of an adjustment period for me. So, sorry for missing last week. We'll make up for it this week and have some cool conversation. We've got lots of questions this week. So, before we get into anything at the top of the show, we like to remind everybody of the email, which is bardadvice@gmail.com. It also looks like bardadvice. Please send all of your questions, critiques, criticisms, complaints, all of those things there to bardadvice@gmail.com. It also looks like bardadvice. Did I already say that? Well, if I said it twice, then maybe you'll remember it. Please send things there, because that's half the show. I'm only part of it, right? I can only respond to or provide advice for questions that I receive. So much appreciated for everybody that sends things there. Please continue to do so. And if you've not ever sent a question or a story or a follow-up or something, please do. bardadvice@gmail.com. If you want to get some merch, you can do so over at manshorts.com, or more notably at krakendice.com. I've actually got some good news on that. We have a date for the Florida Man dice. But we'll talk about those as well in a moment. And then also, if you want to contribute to anything that I'm doing musically, you can do so directly via PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo, all of which are Yazik, Yahzick. I also have a link in the description for the GoFundMe that I'm running for just a little bit of help through my process of getting my certification. So if you're interested in that, the link for that is in the description as well. Also, at the top of the show, we like to thank all of our members, our patrons, anybody who is viewing, any super chatters. Like to remind everybody to please like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications, and rate the podcast on your respective platforms. And if somebody in the chat can please link the Discord, looks like somebody already has. If you want to join the Discord, please do. There's lots of usually nerdy, funny stuff happening in there. So, hope that everybody's doing well. It's nice to see all of the regulars here in chat. Thank you for joining us very much. I think that's all of the main housekeeping stuff that I wanted to cover. So, yes. And actually, before I move on, let's talk about the dice really quickly before we get into Art Corner. So, I did put together a little bit of marketing material for that. So, the fourth set of the dice, which is my favorite, is the Florida Man dice. They were a bit delayed, but they are now available. Or I should rather say that they'll be available next Thursday, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern on krakendice.com. As you can see there, you've got the cool bag and the box that they come in, the dice themselves. They're my favorite design. They're really cool looking, and the cards I think are really fun too. It's Jay and Justin. So just so you're aware, those will be available next Thursday, 7/25 at 9 p.m. Eastern on krakendice.com. So mark your calendar and go get you a set of the new dice if you're interested in that sort of thing. Okay. So, that's all of the main housekeeping stuff. Let's talk about Art Corner. There's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about for Art Corner. And I will admit that most of this podcast for tonight was built last week. It was really just kind of at the last minute that I decided that it was too much and I wasn't going to be able to do the episode. So, a lot of these things were already prepared last week. So just kind of keep that in mind. But the first thing that I wanted to talk about on Art Corner is Eminem's new album, The Death of Slim Shady, Coup de Grace. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, there are a lot of people who are not happy with it. There are a lot of people who don't think that it's very good. I will say I didn't think that it's the best album he's ever put out, but I certainly don't think it's the worst. I'd probably put it right in the middle. I think that it's really cool. There's some cool features on it. Supposedly there's a B-side that's coming, so I'm kind of excited about that. But if you've ever been a fan of his stuff, particularly if you're from my generation, if you're like mid to late 30s and you kind of grew up on that stuff, then you'll probably really like it. I think that there's a lot of good tracks. I think personally, I like Bad One a lot. I kind of like the ones in the middle that are really crazy, like Lucifer and Antichrist, and it's good. It's a good album. And Renaissance, actually, the first one is really cool. It reminds me of like Never Enough and like, you know, early to middle 2000s Eminem before the Not Afraid stuff. So I really enjoy it, and I highly recommend it. If you haven't listened to it, listen to it. Also, another this other piece for Art Corner. Whoops, that's the dice. That's not supposed to be there. Oh no. Wait a minute. Maybe I can change it really quick. Let's try this. Oh, it worked. Let's go. Okay, so Supacell, which is a show on Netflix. I don't know if anybody's seen. It is a British show about people who have superpowers. And it's really, really good. My wife and I watched it, and we really, really liked it. It's interesting that British television and just like productions in general are just so different than Americans. And I can't put my finger on like how to describe it. I think the word that my wife used was like intrusive. Like I feel like a lot of I feel like a lot of American cinema is like kind of intrusive or kind of like aggressive in its directive as to like how you're supposed to think. And British stuff seems to be more presented like a play, which I kind of like a lot. Like some of it's a little goofy, but it's like Doctor Who in that way, right? Where it's like the story is good enough that you can suspend that disbelief. You don't have to have like Michael Bay explosions and crazy CGI stuff going on all the time to enjoy it. So I would personally recommend Supacell to anyone if you haven't seen it. It's definitely worth checking out. After like the first bit of the first episode, my wife and I were pretty hooked in. So I think it's really good. Let me see what some of the people are saying here too. Has he become more Weird Al than NWA? I did not know that Weird Al had a new single today either. And yes, I have heard that, Pirate. I've heard that it's, you know, it's rare too that Eminem puts out any kind of directive with his stuff, and he did make a point to tweet, like, make sure you listen to it in order. And people are saying that if you run it in reverse, that it's actually a bit of a different story. So either way, I think it was a really fun, cool album, and I recommend anybody to give that a listen. And check out Supacell on Netflix. All right, so that's all of the housekeeping stuff, Art Corner stuff. Went a little longer than we usually do, but that's okay. We've got some questions this evening that we'll talk about, and then we'll do a little chat at the end. So the first question of the evening is going to be from Max, and Max asks, "Hey Bard, Wizards of the Coast continues their dropping of info on the class reworks. As someone who loves playing healers, one that recently got my attention was the Cleric. Have you checked out Dvinie Spark? What do you think about this? Thanks." Well, thank you for the question, Max. Admittedly, I hadn't looked into this. I'm not much of a healer player myself, and I think maybe I've played a Cleric. Probably count on one hand how many times I've played a Cleric. But I did look into it, and so for anybody who hasn't, this is actually the description from an article, probably on Beyond, maybe somewhere else. But with Dvinie Spark, as a magic action, you can focus divine energy towards a creature you see within 30 feet. Then you can choose to heal or harm them. You roll a d8 and add your Wiz modifier. If they're choosing to heal, they recover that number in hit points. The ability scales up as you gain levels, with 2d8 at level 7, 3d8 at level 13, and 4d8 at level 18. It's almost like a Cleric's little Eldritch Blast. But it can also heal, which is really cool. You can also force the creature to make a Constitution saving throw and deal that number in your choice of radiant or necrotic damage if they fail to save, or half if they succeed. Which is crazy too, that you still do half damage on a save. I think it's cool. I think it gives the Cleric more combat utility, and it allows for more opportunities with roleplay, not just from a character standpoint, but from how the Cleric interacts with friends and foes during battle. It seems to me that Wizards is focused on beefing up the class's earlier level. It's almost like the transition from when they went from well, we don't talk about 4E, but when they made 5E, it was almost like the transition from Halo 2 to Halo 3. Everything just got kind of beefed up, and it seems like that's kind of happening again, which I think is overall pretty smart, because it'll not only be interesting for new players to be able to do more cool stuff early, but it'll also, I think, encourage players who typically avoid healers to give the class a shot. And it'll also let people run clerics as DPR instead of just healing, which is cool. So, clerics are already god tier. This will make them stronger. Yeah. Well, and I also think, too, that, like, circumstance is critical when you're discussing any of that stuff, right? Because the DM can counter with just as much broken stuff. They have access to all the stuff. What's the range of Divine Spark? It's 30 feet, it says. Right? Didn't I just read that? Yeah. And it's a creature you can see, which is pretty cool. Bard go already? Gee whiz. What have we been talking, 10 minutes? How did that already happen with the Bard go? Yeah, but I think it's a neat thing. And, anything that encourages people to play more of the, well, I don't know. Is Cleric a very popular class? Do lots of people play Clerics? I don't. But I'll tell you what, with something like Divine Spark, I'd be a lot more likely to. I also saw that with Divine Strike, you can choose between necrotic and radiant damage. Has that always been the case? Any Cleric players out there? I don't know if that's new or not. But at any rate, I think it's cool. Usually main Cleric. Well, what do you think about it then, Bean? Yeah, they're not popular. Yeah. Most definitely. They finally come to the realization that most play is done from 1 to 10, and they got to make that area more enticing to players. Oh, wow. That's actually a really great point, Avram. Yeah. I mean, how long is the average D&D game? That's the kind of data we need. That's what we need. We need statistics on D&D. I'm sure they're out there somewhere. Grave Clerics have been a favorite. They've been broken since 1E. Oh, and yes, thank you, Chris. Remember, in the Discord, if you join the Discord, you can share suggestions for Bardgo cards. For anybody that doesn't know about the Bardgo thing, that's a thing that was started a couple of episodes ago. It's basically bingo for this show, and apparently I'm so predictable and consistent that we've already got a winner, and we're like 10 minutes into the episode, so that's good. Okay, so I think that answers that. Thank you for the question, Max, and best of luck and enjoyment in playing with your Cleric. 5e, I feel like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They say all play happens under level 11, but only release content up to level 11. Yeah, and, in Baldur's Gate 3, you only go up to level 12, right? It gets harder. It gets harder from the DM. Because I've played epic campaigns. I've run campaigns where we've run a character through 20 levels. I've played campaigns where we started at level 20 and just went into epic stuff. But it gets crazy because you're fighting titans and like literal gods at that point. So there's only so much you can do, Is there a limit number on Divine Spark? I don't think so. I think it's like a cantrip. But yeah, and in 3.5, I think that it was, those kind of abilities were more spread out. It would take you well into level 15 or 20 to really start doing a lot of the things that you could probably accomplish at like level 8 these days. Back with the older books where it was, well, I don't know. I guess that's not true because like a lot of the multi-classes and prestige classes, you could hit the prereqs for relatively early. I feel like you could at least get prereqs for stuff by like level 9 or 10, and then at that point, when you're into 11 or 12, you're starting into your prestige class, which is doing pretty crazy stuff. So, okay. Oh, well, thank you very much, Brian. Thank you for stopping by. I will indeed keep it up. I'll do my best. All right, so we got an answer for that one. We got to move on so don't get stuck on it. Thank you for the question, Max. This next question is from Ruby. And hope you're doing well, Ruby. Ruby asks, hi, Chaz. I really hope you're staying hydrated. It's about 100 to 110 with humidity lately. Oh, yeah, it's real hot. It's big hot today. Lots of staying in and watching YouTube and listening to the podcast. So watching you all play D&D in person and also in isolation during the lockdown, I'm now wondering about dice and how people roll them. Is there raw on whether you are to use one hand or both hands? It appears that some people prefer two hands and will try to convince the one-hand people that there's a reason for that it's the reason for their low rolls. Your thoughts? Now, when you played online on Roll20, it seems unfair having the program roll for people. Wouldn't it be better to use dice and have people roll on camera? Thanks again. Have a safe week. Thank you for the question, Ruby. So, let's see here. I've got an answer for you. I wrote some stuff down. I don't know what the raw on this is. I don't know that there is raw on this. But it's probably mostly just preference. I'm usually a one-hander, I think. I hadn't really thought about it until you asked, but yeah, I don't even know if I roll like with two hands and then roll with one. I think I just one-handed roll. I'm sure that somebody out there has data that shows that rolling one way is more statistically efficient than another, but I've never really gotten that obsessed with it. For me, I think that randomness is what makes it fun. So it's just, to me, rolling the dice is kind of a means to an end. The enjoyment that I get with my dice is just like generally what they look like and, you know, stacking them up and stuff. I don't care as much about rolling. That's just kind of like a mechanic for me. But, however, there is such thing as unlucky dice or a die that isn't working well. So typically when I play, I only roll with one hand. If I roll badly with a die, I will swap it out. You know, you can tell if it's not rolling well for you. I usually have a big bag of dice that includes at least one full set. There's also such thing as unbalanced dice. You can check to balance your dice in a glass of salt water. I think you can roll however you want to, and it doesn't make much of a difference. As for using the dice online, I like doing it with the program just because it makes it easier from a production standpoint, as well as just like everybody being able to see the roll. Plus, it's, you know, like I said, it's just as random, which is the main goal. So I'm not opposed to using real dice in an online game, but it would depend on the circumstance and, you know, just how much extra work that might mean for me. Let me see what chat is saying. It's now I'm having to like look around this arm, and it's not as convenient as usual. Use one hand. The roll of the dice is random. A dice tower. Yeah, that's a good point. I've never really used a dice tower. Depends on how much you need, how many dice you need to roll. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, if you're doing sneak attack with a rogue, or you're doing, you know, some sort of a spell that requires a lot of dice. I will say, if I find myself rolling a bunch of damage die, I will probably shuffle them around in two hands and just kind of throw them out. My party uses the dice tower. Wooden stash box that's designed to look like a Hulk comic book. That's dope. One hand for sure, get the swoosh going. We have a player in our group that only rolls our dice using an old Yahtzee cup. That's cool. Yeah, and again, it's just, you know, I think it's mostly preference. I don't think that there's any rules that say you have to roll a specific way. If it's clutch enough, I practice to roll to get the low rolls out of the way. Yeah, we used to make jokes about that, and like when we were coming up playing, it was just like, oh, get the bad rolls out. But inevitably, you know, you're gonna roll a nat 1 when you're trying to get the killing blow on the boss, but you're gonna roll a nat 20 to like open a random door that leads nowhere. So don't like letting the computer roll for me. Classic AD&D 2E. No, not me. I actually never played 2E. I started with 3. And then on to 3.5. But I think that a lot of people are just kind of stick with whatever version they're used to or what they started with. I mean, 5E is fine. But, you know, over the years, like the D&D edition videos, they're kind of like a hybrid between like 3.5 and 5E rules. So it's just whatever your preference is. Learned in 2E, but became addicted in 3.5. Yeah. That's how I feel about 3 to 3.5. Like, I learned 3. Oh, geez. I learned 3, and I was like, yeah, this is okay. This is cool. And then with 3.5, with some of the changes, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm in. Plus, they just started churning out so many books. I want to say, like, 2005 or 2006, there was a year where there were books coming out, like, every 2 weeks. It was so cool. Homebrew so much that your current edition is nothing like any of the raw versions. Yeah. And that's a thing too, just over time, like with your group, with table rules and stuff. And, sometimes I forget that something is not really a rule in the game. It's just something that we came up with. Yes. And I've never had to calculate THACO. Thank goodness. I don't know if I would understand that. Was playing AD&D when 2E was already out. Got 3 on launch day. Was a playtester for 5. Heck yeah. Getting a tangent. Yeah, the question was about dice. Yeah, the question was about rolling dice. Yeah. So my final answer is roll the dice however you want to roll the dice. I don't think that it has any bearing on, the outcome. But yeah, 4 sets of dice. Nice. I have so many dice. It's ridiculous. I have so many. I had so many dice before we even partnered with Kraken, and then since we partnered with Kraken, it's just like they've sent me so many dice, and then I have a bunch of different sets of our own dice. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. All right. So, thank you for the question, Ruby. Let's keep moving on. The next question is from George. And George asks, been a listener since the first broadcast. In the D&D videos, people always make fun of Sarah for fudging dice rolls and modifiers. When we knew someone that did this, as a joke, we replaced their dice with some loaded ones so that the D20 wanted to roll a 1. The DM was in on it and used it to trap the player's character in the room of a living castle. After the third nat 1 in a row, the DM invoked the Monopoly rule where your PC automatically dies. We eventually told him, and it led to a continuum of pranks and jokes between everyone. What's your opinion on lighthearted tricks like this to mess with party members, either to teach them a lesson or just for fun? Also, what are your thoughts on the Monopoly rule? P.S. Did you ever think of trying it on Sarah? Thank you for the question, George. So there's a lot to unpack there. So I wrote some stuff down on that, and chat, feel free to speak about your opinions on this thing. I think that it seems mostly fun and harmless. I'm not too big on pranks myself, personally. I'm not much of a prank guy. I'm the type of person that would probably just, speak with somebody about it. Or I'm also the type of person that would make, a passive-aggressive comment that would, force the conversation. But, I think that it's you can approach it however you want to. Obviously, you have your, every friend group dynamic is different. So, it's whatever works for you and your people. I'm the type that probably just speak to someone about it, find out why they're fudging their roles, typical conversation about expectations and goals. It seems slightly insensitive to call them out in front of everybody, but then again, you followed it up with the fact that it turned into just kind of a group prank thing. So, as long as nobody's really getting their feelings hurt, it's not a big deal. There is something to be said about a player who's a hardcore power gamer or trying to just be Sarah and just succeed all the time. Plus, everybody's party, I said that earlier as well. Everybody's party or friend group dynamic is different. Hopefully the player learned their lesson. As for the Monopoly rule, that sounds terrifying. I roll pretty badly, so if a DM implemented that in a game and I was playing, I might very well die. But it's not a bad idea for use against Sarah. It's something that I'll have to keep in mind for that in the future. My players get the same speech every session 0. I have too much to pay attention to, so I don't worry about catching cheaters or dice fudgers. That's on my players. I kind of tend to have the same attitude about it, because you're not cheating me. If anything, it's an honor system type of thing where it's I suppose that it could get excessive, but just the general fudging, it's like you're really only taking away fun from yourself if you do that. So it's like, whatever, you're welcome to do that. Love lighthearted tricks, but as a rogue, I can't trust the cleric, the fighter, the paladin, the druid. They're all narcs, but the warlock might be cool. Do lingering injuries instead of the monopoly roll when it comes to nat ones. Oh, please explain, River. I've never been in a group where someone intentionally did the math wrong. Yeah, honestly, I don't think that I ever have either. Which is part of what makes the whole, like, Sarah thing fun, because that kind of came about organically, too. That was a thing where, you know, as we started getting deep into, like, the lore of the editions, I was kind of unconsciously, Sarah kind of unconsciously turned into a badass. It wasn't a thing that I ever was like, this is what I'm going to do. It just kind of happened. And then by the time people were picking up on it and they were like, oh, well, she's clearly fudging her rolls, it was like, oh, okay, well, then this is a bit that I'm just going to, like, lean heavy into, like Lance's sunglasses. So then there was a period there where I think at one point she just had, like, a giant D6, and she was just rolling that for her D20 rolls. So that was just fun a bit to kind of hammer in. Oh, it's a table you use. It's a way to make nat ones even scarier. Oh, that sounds bad. At the end of the day, it's a game of playing pretend. What's the point of cheating? Yeah, I tend to agree. And again, it all comes back to those expectations and goals. It's like, what are we doing? Are you just you just want to be like Mr. Strong cool guy? Because, like, I think a lot of that can be accomplished with just, like, single RPGs. For me, the point of the group exercise is that we're all kind of contributing our own different pieces and you know, interacting with one another. You know what I mean? Like, I was never too obsessed about, like, doing the most damage or doing the coolest thing, as much as it was just like I would play my character as genuine to the character description or backstory as I thought possible, you know? Lance's wrestling shirts or Waylon's yawns. Hey, I have nothing to do with Lance's wrestling shirts. That guy's just a mark. That guy might be the biggest mark I've ever known in my whole life. You know, he knows more about wrestling. He's seen more wrestling than maybe anybody ever. We were talking about wrestling the other day. We tend to talk about it frequently when we interact. It usually comes up because I've been kind of unplugged for a little bit, but I definitely grew up watching it. And Triple H, since Monday Night Raw is going to Netflix, Triple H has sort of hinted at the fact that we're, like, exiting the PG era and going to go back into more of, like, an attitude type situation. Oh, hey, Justin, what's happening, pal? No character is going to hit every time or pass every check. Yeah, most definitely. Even if you're great. That's the whole point of the dice roll. You know, even if you're somebody who, and I'll tell you where you feel that a lot is Baldur's Gate 3. It happens a lot where it's just like, wow, I have a plus 14 to attack and this person has a 15 AC and I missed. So, you know, it's a weird one. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's any problem with that as long as everybody's, like, on the same page with what's going on with, like, the jokes and the pranks. It's no big deal. Plus, it doubles as a way to kind of, you know, offer some corrective action to somebody who might not know that you shouldn't be doing that or know that they're kind of cheating themselves out of the experience. Because some of my better memories with the game in general were our mistakes. I think my immediate thought is in the We Play when we fought the Beavers. It's like episode 4 or 5, and we did so terrible. We almost died, I think, to these beavers. It was a real mess. But those lend themselves to some of the funnier stories. Or another story that I could think of when we played D20 Modern all those years ago when we were supposed to rob this casino, and I failed, and I nat 1 to bluff check. I might not have nat 1'd it. I think I did nat 1 it because it triggered, like, the alarm in the whole facility. But we ended up having to, like, blow the whole casino up. We were supposed to get in, get out, nobody gets hurt. We ended up having to, like, blow up the whole casino. And that's, like, a poor roll story. If I would have just, like, fudged my roll and, like, we would have gone through it, it wouldn't have ended up as fun as it was. So if you pull a prank, don't get offended when you get pranked. That too. That for sure. Some people are weird about dishing it and not taking it. which is, by the way, one of the reasons that I'm not much of a pranky guy, because I don't really like pranks being played on me. So as a result, I don't really play them on people. Maybe every now and then if it's somebody that I really know and it's just like a small little thing. But I usually don't go out of my way to do that to others because I don't like it being done to me. So I don't want to give people the impression that I'm like ready to get pranked because I don't like it. So, all right. So I think we got an answer for you in there, George. Much appreciated, the question. The next question of the evening, and as we have a question every week, is from Chris. And Chris asks, group dynamics within the classes. Which classes do you think would be friends, rivals, etc.? Thank you for the question, Chris. This was fun. As typical of your questions, this was fun to write notes on. So feel free in the chat to throw out there who you think, what dynamics you've got, just on kind of a base level. I've always thought bards and barbarians would get along in kind of like a buddy cop, big guy, little guy relationship, because bards tend to be pretty extra, just as a general rule. And, you know, the whole barbarian class is built around that with things like rage and frenzy. And also, bards tend to be kind of the storytellers of the realm. They kind of sing songs, tell stories about like epic battles and events and wars. And a lot of those involve soldier-like barbarians. So I've always loved the dynamic between the bard and the barbarian. And it's always fun to have like kind of a buddy that you know have like a buddy cop relationship with in D&D, where it's like you be the little bard guy or the little rogue guy, and then you be the giant barbarian. Clerics and paladins would probably get along, but they could also be rivals depending on their alignment and deity. They'd probably be able to relate to being like the holy healer warrior types of the group. Wizards and artificers both strike me as classes that are inquisitive and curious about the inner workings of things, so they'd probably have a lot to talk about. Monks and druids might get along. Rogues and fighters strike me as more of like rivals, as well as like rogues and bards. But yeah, those are the ones that I came up with. Let me see what people are saying in chat. Paladin and cleric BFF. Wizard and artificers would be frenemies. Yeah, I can see there being a friendly rivalry between a wizard and an artificer as well. Necromancers and clerics. Vox Machina, the barbarian and cleric are friends. Druids and rangers is another great pairing of friends. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's a great point. Yeah, Ruids. Rangers and druids would likely get along famously. And you could probably throw monks into there, because like I feel like even though monks aren't really on like the nature tip as much, they are, I think, kind of on like that extra planar third eye stuff that druids and rangers are on, right? And probably warlocks. Wizards and sorcerers, yeah. I feel like within the pure spellcasters, you'd probably have some rivalries between like warlock, wizard, and sorks. You underestimate how secretive a wizard and an artificer would be about their inventions. Yeah, that's true. And would probably I'm seeing like a whole movie play out like that in my head now, River, of like an artificer and a wizard who like went to the same business school or something. Or not business school, pardon me, engineering school. They both like went to MIT. And they've just been like competing. It's very like Reed Richards' Dr. Doom kind of situation. I think clerics and some warlocks I think would be good buds, since they could trade ideas on how to successfully start or run a cult. Ah, that's a good point. These aren't the Ruids you're looking for. Dranger. Oh, yeah, that's cool. A Ruid Dranger. That's me. Spellcasting Network, a sword and sorcery reboot of the Social Network. Yeah, I was thinking about that. Just nerds just going to war with one another over just like I mean, you could run a whole D&D campaign around that. That would be really cool. And you could just like have the party, just make them NPCs and just have the party decide which one they want to back, which side they want to choose. But yeah, fighters probably get along with barbarians, probably get along with monks. Maybe not monks though, because they don't use weapons, right? I feel like druids and bards maybe would get along, although the bard might be a little too energetic and crazy for the druid, depending on the druid. But any of the half casters or seemingly half casters like druids, rangers, bards technically, but bards kind of like a catch-all. So that's where I am with the group dynamics between the classes. All right, so let's keep it moving because we've got, let's see, well, we've got 2 more questions and then we'll do a little chat. And one of these, this next one actually is rather in depth, so I do want to make sure that we give it proper time. So let's do that. So thank you for the question, Chris. That was fun. And the next question is from Unknown Valor. Yes? Yes, according to the list of names. And Unknown Valor asks, for a given 3 to 4 hour, oh, look how I spelled hour with no H. For a given 3 to 4 hour game, how do you place the story with combat? How do you pace the story with combat encounters? Challenges. Passive players that almost need to be on rails, i.e. there's a plague in town but players have no idea how to handle it. How often do you add mini challenges, i.e. a secret door in a house that's booby-trapped? How much combat do you limit in a session, if at all? I.e. mansion dinner party, poison guests die and become zombies, then fights death cult in the basement, fights more undead as a necromancer brings death cult back. Finally, that's supposed to be boss. Finally, the boss necromancer. What would you keep? Thanks from the Barbarian. Thank you for the question, Unknown Valor. So, sounds like there's a lot going on there. I think that you can achieve all of that with keeping it all. This is probably the most that I have written down on things. So, chat, go ahead and voice your opinions, but I will speak a little bit about what my thoughts are on it. So, if you've got passive players that need to be on rails, make sure that you provide clear objectives and guidance while still allowing them some agency. You could do this by giving them info that they find on like a bulletin board, or maybe in a way where there's like 2 NPCs that ask them for help, but one of them offers a higher reward. So, they kind of have a choice, but there's kind of an obvious path as well. You could provide structured clues and dynamic events. Specific item that needs to be found to heal someone from the plague, or an NPC visiting the town that has the plague. Maybe the plague has not yet hit the town and an NPC brings it. For the mini challenges, I think that there should be like 1 to 2 per session depending on their difficulty. These are usually best to implement during exploratory phases if possible. You can make the mini challenges relative to or part of the main plot. Perhaps the mini challenges offer direction as to how to proceed. So for a 3 to 4 hour session, you're usually good, I think, with like 2, probably no more than 3 combat encounters. Remember how long combat takes, especially depending on your party size. You can obviously afford more combat encounters with like a party of 3 or 4 versus a party of 7, but not necessarily. It depends on the people and the players. Some people take their time on their turns. Looking at you, spellcasters. So keep that in mind. As far as breakdown on the timing goes, just in general, the one that I wrote down was, 10 to 15 minutes is like an intro to kind of recap last time, describe the current scenario, introduce any important NPCs or items or anything. 45 minutes of RP and exploration, which leads to a first combat encounter that should take like half an hour. So that puts us what, at an hour and a half in. Maybe do you have like a short break, or like at least like in game, like an RP, workout RP stuff. Let the players rest. Then I would spend another half hour or so on the second exploration phase, another half hour for another combat, another half hour, 45 minutes for the final combat, and then with the last 15, 20 minutes, just wrap everything up, recap the session, set up plot hooks for the next session. I don't know that there's too much that you mentioned that I would get rid of, as much of it's just a thing where you want to make sure that you, kind of like on this show, where you kind of keep pace. And I think we've spoken before in the past about having somebody that's like kind of an assistant DM, an assistant to the DM, but just somebody that can kind of just like keep things in check and make things keep moving. That's always helpful. It's always nice to have somebody there that's just like, just like, hey, don't forget to do this. So, all right, let me see what people are saying in chat now, too. I like to layer secrets upon secrets so my players don't always see everything. As for combat, I would design static encounters that are story-based and random encounters rolled off a table. All this should be planned out beforehand in your campaigns you play that the party wants to stop. If they make an objective faster than planned, we take a break so you can reset for next session. Depending on how the session goes, all of that could be done within 3 to 4 hours. Only 20% of that might be finished. Yeah, that's the thing too. I think probably just good advice that I just thought of, like overall, is to just like make sure that you're easy on yourself and that your players are easy on the fact that like none of us really know how long this stuff's going to take. The amount of times that I've derailed a campaign, the amount of times that we started the night with a particular goal in mind and then proceeded to spend 4 hours doing none of that, it happens. So I wouldn't be, don't stress yourself out too much. You do kind of want the thing to unfold organically. But to Pirate's point, like having a lot of this prepped beforehand can help mitigate a lot of that. So let's see. My players also tend to be very wary or cautious of empty hallways. Don't add in so much detail or exposition that your players lose focus and start zoning out. Yeah, that can be, you kind of have to find the balance between how deep the world is, how deep the rabbit hole goes, as they say. Because if it gets to be too much, particularly if it's for, players who are kind of passive and need a hand, then you don't want to overwhelm them with stuff, because that's just like the paralysis of choice, right? So you do want to just like find that medium of railroading and offering agency. In my lore, they're required to pair up like Warder and ACD in Wheel of Time. Oh yeah, Cleric and Paladin. Depends on if they split the party. Don't split the party. Three one way, 4 the other would have 2 combat encounters at the same time. Yeah, definitely. And been there as well. Bard and Druid pair would have Irish mythology vibes. Back in HODQROT, I derailed a combat by successfully raiding a dragon mid-combat. What should have been a 15-minute fight lasted 4 weeks in real life. Got my dragon. Raising a dragon, I see. Don't write yourself into a corner either if your players go in the opposite direction of where they need to go. Interject the story bits they need to know so they have them. Most definitely. And some of that stuff can be done that way, right? Like just because they don't go to the library that you wanted them to go to doesn't mean that they can't like find the book in the cave. Don't lose sight of the forest for the trees. Isn't that what they say? Something like that. Something along those lines. So yeah, I think that you can accomplish those things. That's personally how I would break it down, but I wouldn't obsess about like hard rules about timing and stuff. I think that it's just a matter of, a lot of it has to do with the party themselves. And if they're passive, like I said, you need to be kind of like clear and specific with how you guide them through things, because it's kind of like, all right, come on guys, let's go. And also, just like in general, take a look at the party composition and the player composition and see if one of those members of the party would be willing to kind of act as your assistant in that regard, to just kind of like keep things on track and moving forward. It's an exercising in good meta. It's an exercise in good meta, or rather avoiding metagaming. But if you've got somebody that's experienced enough to do it, then you can do that. You don't always need to clock watch. Yes, that's very true. You can just have somebody else do it. Many a time they discover the story items on a random bandit corpse they stumble across. Yeah, most definitely. Oh, you're not saying split the party. The party themselves does it all the time. Well, yeah, for sure. Splitting the party is a thing that's like, I don't know. It's like everybody agrees that it's bad, but people do it all the time. So, interesting NPCs always get things moving. Yeah, NPCs are a really great tool, too, because you can interject whatever you want with them. You know, in the case of the plague thing, if they don't really know what to do, you can just have an NPC who's like who's in charge of public safety for the town, and they just walk up to the party and just start telling them to do stuff. That's something that totally falls into like the story and also gives you a little more control and power over what's going on with the party in terms of like railroading and story. So, splitting the party is a meme that's based in reality, most definitely. Yeah, that's been pretty crazy. Alrighty, so think that there's an answer in there for you. Thank you for the question, Unknown Valor. Hope that gives you some guidance there. We have one final question for the evening, and then we'll do a little chat. We'll talk a little bit about dice and just kind of go from there. So the last question of the evening is from John, and John asks, hello, Yazik and chat. Basketball question incoming. As you know, FIBA is underway at the Summer Olympics in France. Some are saying this Team USA is the best team ever assembled, better than the Dream Team and even the Redeem Team. What do you think? Also, make that video about why nerds should love sports. Thank you. Yes, John, thank you for the reminder. I do need to make that video. I've already written it. In fact, I might have already recorded all the audio for it. It's just a matter of putting the video for it together. So, yeah, when I find the time, if I find the time, I'll definitely get on top of that. So yeah, FIBA basketball. We're in the Olympics, Summer Olympics in France, and this Team USA basketball is pretty ridiculous. It might be the best team we've ever had on paper, surely. I do think it's a little odd that they kind of snubbed Jaylen Brown for Derek White. I don't know. I probably would have erred on the side of picking the Finals MVP, but that's just me. But regardless, the team is still super stacked. So, Bam Adebayo, Devin Booker, Steph Curry, Anthony Davis, KD, Anthony Edwards, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Halliburton, Drew Holiday, LeBron, Jason Tatum, and Derek White. Pretty insane. I think just because this might be the best team that we've ever assembled on paper doesn't necessarily mean that it'll perform that way. Thus far, we have been. We're kind of kicking everybody's butt at the Olympics. But as far as that roster goes, I think LeBron's the GOAT. That's just my opinion. People have different opinions about it. And pretty much everybody else on that list is a Hall of Famer. Maybe a handful of guys won't be, but at least 9 out of those 12 are Hall of Fame guys. So it probably is the best. The Redeem Team had a few players that weren't at this level. I don't think guys like Carlos Boozer or Michael Redd were as good as some of this team's lesser players. I think, in fact, the original Dream Team probably has a better argument for being a stronger overall team, but that was also like over 30 years ago when international competition wasn't as near on the level as it is today. But we have been doing well in Olympic basketball. We beat Canada 86-72. We beat Australia 98-92. We beat Serbia 105-79. Tomorrow we play South Sudan, then Germany, Serbia again, South Sudan again, and Puerto Rico. I think overall, lately, globally, basketball talent has been through the roof. especially in Europe. Spain's not that far behind us in points. So, and like I said, just because we might be the best team that we've ever seen on paper doesn't necessarily mean for how it all plays out. So, no KD, no Russell Westbrook. Yeah, there's a KD. Russell's not on there. Russell's kind of washed, to be honest. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Russell Westbrook's a great player, but like in comparison to that list, they don't play on paper, and don't call me Charlie. So, Sportsketball. Well, hey, it's full of cool lore. I'm telling you. Saw a Facebook discussion: is LeBron ever even the greatest Laker of all time? Yeah, he is. Well, I don't know. That's actually a good question because you have Magic and Kareem. Personally, I'm shocked that Kobe's ever even in the conversation because he only has one regular season MVP. Like, sure, I think that Kobe was like an incredible shooting guard and maybe the best scorer of all time. But I think from like an accolade standpoint, I think Kareem has more of an argument against LeBron and Michael than Kobe does. So, the original Dream Team had almost no competition, so it's hard to say if they weren't stronger or weaker than the current team. Yeah, and the competition is something to consider with that too, right? Because today, those international teams are a lot stronger than they were in 1992. So, assuming that we continue to do well and continue to beat these teams and, you know, get gold medals and win, then it probably will be considered the best team of all time then, if that's the case. he is definitely a drama queen. I'll agree to that. But I just think that like when you really get down into like the real bones of stats in terms of the teams that LeBron beat in the eras that he beat them in, you know, I think that LeBron has beaten more talented teams than Michael, than Kareem. So, you know, and with Kobe, it's like those first 3 rings were really Shaq's. You know, it's not a thing where it is like with Michael and LeBron where they're like clearly the best on the team. So, yeah, I think that Kareem has more of a conversation for the GOAT than Kobe. But I'm a LeBron guy, so that's fine. 6 minutes behind, don't apologize. Doesn't matter what time it is. Okay, so we're officially into chat, so we can talk about anything, whatever. Dice, let's talk about those. These are the dice I've got, as you can see. The Florida Man. Hold on, I don't know what that looks like on the screen. You can't really see it because you can see a reflection of me. But let's open these things up so I can show people what to expect from them. I got them like yesterday. A bunch of them came in the mail for just me. And check it out. The bag is cool looking. Yeah, there's no reflection on the bag. It's like a gator and like toxic waste. Just Florida stuff. There's like a bicycle in the swamp. And then the dice themselves, which I have shown, I think, when I had like the original prototype dice. You can see the blue with the pink numbering. I think it's really cool. I really like it. And then there's the 2 cards. There's the there's the Gator Lance Death Roll. Focuses. Bleh. And then the Florida Maneuver. We got those cards on there. So you can actually see the not Supacell. That's not what that's supposed to be. How did that happen? They keep getting changed. There it is, the dice. They'll be available on the 25th, next Thursday at 9 p.m., so check those out. Let's talk about good things of the week. You want to talk about good things of the week? I've got good things of the week. Yesterday was my wife and I's 5th wedding anniversary. As a matter of fact, as of next month, we will have been together for 11 years. But as of yesterday, we've been married for 5. And so that was nice. We just kind of got a day to ourselves, and we got our refrigerator replaced, which was actually really nice. So we have a nice new fridge. That's been good. And just kind of hanging out and relaxing yesterday. So that was very nice. And then another good thing of the week, I think just in general, I haven't really spoken about it since I started, but I am currently in the process of achieving my CompTIA A+ certification for IT. I'm about 20 to 25% of the way through the program. So I'm just kind of hoping that I can get that knocked out and then hopefully get a job somewhere where I can continue that. Obviously, there was like a huge freak out with CloudStrike this morning, with Microsoft and like banks and airlines. And so hopefully, nobody here that's a fan or follower of the podcast has had to deal with any of that, but it's good possibility. There's lots of weird stuff going on there. But it actually gives me a little bit more, makes me feel good that I've decided to kind of go down this route, because I do really believe that like security from an internet, like cybersecurity, is going to be really necessary in the future. And once I get my A+ certification, I'm going to go for my security license. So thank you very much. I appreciate the encouragement. It's kind of embarrassing a little bit in a way, just because like I really should have done this 15, 20 years ago. And had I known that this was how it was done, I probably would have just done this. Because with school, the thing about me in school is that I don't do very well with that kind of structure. I barely graduated high school, but for the fact that I was a really good test taker, and I was usually pretty good at like projects too, but I didn't do homework. I had bad attendance. So it was only like my understanding of the material, specifically recognition, because I don't have very good recall, but I have really, really good recognition. So, I wouldn't do homework for 6 weeks, but then I would get an A. Then I would get an A on the test, so I'd end up with like a C in the class. Anyway, all that said, I didn't really get along well with college because, again, it's the kind of structure, and so I just went into the workforce, and thankfully, several years ago, this kind of took off a bit to where it could afford to pay the bills, and it's just kind of been going down and down and down. And then now with the new world of TikTok and all the algorithm changes, this stuff's not really making us all that much money. Still a bit, but not very much. I've had to rely more and more on not only just like my hourly job, my regular day job, but also just like the kindness of family and friends and strangers to just kind of make it through. And so made the decision that I just want to do this process and get my certification and then get a regular job, and maybe some health insurance would be nice. So I'm in the process of that, which is a great thing. I've really been enjoying it. So sorry, I keep talking about me. What's going on with everybody else? Oh, that's right. You guys have known each other for a while. Ron and Ruby, 40 years. That's crazy. Good for you. Oh, you made your first batch of oh, dude, strawberry jam? Let's go. Everything's been getting hacked. Change your passwords and security questions. Yeah, no doubt. It's just good practice, Your brother comes home to visit Tuesday. Haven't seen him since September. Whoa. Well, that's awesome. What is an ISSO, Scotty? I don't know what that is. Good things of the week. Last week helped my boss move out of a less than great living situation. Well, that's nice. Anyone who wants any time bardadvice cancel for any reason. Oh, yeah, that's a good point, Pirate. Yeah, I saw that you had made a note about that. If for any reason in the future I do need to cancel the podcast, feel free to, do your own thing in the Discord. Sucked at standardized testing, was smart enough to help tutor the actual smart coding class. Yeah, I'm really good at tests. I'm telling you, it's recognition. Not all tests. If it's like an essay test, I'm out of luck. But if it's multiple choice, forget about it, dude. I recognize patterns so well. I don't even have to finish reading the question, and I'm like, oh, it's this, because I've seen that before. One time I saw it once, so now I know it. It's like my rap lyrics. Like if I can remember the first line, I can remember the whole verse. Managed to pick up a ServiceNow developer position after some time on an IT apprenticeship. Interesting. Information System Security Officer. Oh, thank you. Wow. Yeah. If you're not in the Discord already, Scotty, join the Discord, and then we can maybe chat on there. Because I will say, like, I have some friends that are in the field, and I'm going to probably be poking them here as I get closer to the time to take my exam with just, like, questions to see if I can maybe get some clarification on some things. And then more importantly, once I actually get my A+ certification, somebody helping me find a job, because that's what I need. Read an article that said valedictorians are ushered into success by society but usually lack creativity. You know what's funny about that is that I wrote and performed our high school graduation song, and as a result, my picture in the paper was bigger than both the valedictorian and the salutatorian. And I graduated with like a 2.3 GPA. So, you know. It's you know, awards aren't everything. Taught your first pickling class for the season. That's cool. Got to be the light board OP for the MLB All-Star Village. That's way cool. Heading to St. Ingus instead of Tawas City. Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with that other place. The new job interview is for the Osage Nation archaeology position of the Tribal Historic Preservation Office. That's way cool, dude. Hope you get it. That's rad. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Brian. I actually am really enjoying it. It is, you know, some of it's challenging. Some of it seems like another language. And in a way, it kind of is. But it seems like most of it is just kind of like general problem solving and, you know, just understanding of a thing that not a lot of people have understanding for. So, mugshot got more coverage in your town's paper than the valedictorian. Cool. Well, dang, here we are already at the end. I don't want to go too much longer over because I don't want to do as much post because I've got schoolwork that I need to do. So, man, that went by quickly, as it does, as it tends to. So, all right, before we get out of here, let's do some things. Remind everybody once more about the dice. Just one more time, a reminder, they'll be coming out next Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern, so go over to krakendice.com and get yourself a set. They're real cool looking. Like I said, I think they're my favorite of the four. I do like the first set that we dropped, but I like these, I think, the most. These were the ones that I was most excited about, and as you know, of course, they were the ones that were delayed, but no longer. They will be back. They will be available for purchase next Thursday, the 25th at 9 p.m. Okay, so as a reminder before we get out of here, we'd like to once again thank all of our members, our patrons, our super chatters. Remind everybody to please like, comment, subscribe, rate the podcast, turn on notifications. Please send any questions, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques, etc. to bardadvice@gmail.com. It also looks like bardadvice. If you want to get some merch, you can do so over at manshorts.com, or you can also go over to krakendice.com and get yourself some dice. If you'd like to contribute to anything that I'm doing musically, you can do so directly via PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo, all of which are Yazik, Y-A-H-Z-I-C-K. We will be back here next week, same Bard time, same Bard channel, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Man Shorts YouTube channel. The audio for this podcast will be made available tomorrow at Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope that everybody has a fantastic weekend and an even better week, and we will see you next time.